Hi guys, this is Miss Steyer and I'm here with my student, Kayla. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kaylla Howery. I'm 14 and I'm in 9th grade.
And Kayla very kindly agreed to talk to us today. We've been learning about genetics and we've been learning about a specific disease called hemophilia. And Kayla mentioned that she actually has a version of this disease called Van Willebrand's disease. So I'm here just to ask her a few questions so that she can share with you guys a little bit about this disease. So why don't you start us off, Kayla, talking about what is your condition, what does it stand for, and what does it mean?
I have von Willebrand's disease, which is a bleeding disorder in which I have a tendency to bleed resulting from insufficient or low levels of von Willebrand's factor, and the factor can also be abnormal or absent.
So we learned about in class how blood has several different components to it, and one of the clotting factors that we all have in our blood is called Van Willebrand's factor. And having Van Willebrand's disease just means that you have a little bit less of that factor, and therefore your blood won't clot quite as quickly. Okay, so did you find out anything about what chromosome it's found on?
It's found on the 12th chromosome, on the P end.
Okay, so we learned about autosomal chromosomes being our non-sex chromosome, and Van Willebrand's protein is found on the 12th chromosome. Okay. So how did you first discover that you had Van Willebrand's disease?
So I would get nosebleeds very frequently when I was little, and they took a lot to stop. And I also got bruised very easily. Like an example being elementary school, I had a bruise on my hip that was there for like a while, and so that was another symptom.
And does anybody else in your family have Van Willebrand's?
My sister does, and she had nose surgery recently, and they had to come after the surgery to our house and inject factor in so she wouldn't bleed out.
Interesting. So how does it impact your life? Like, how do you treat Van Willebrand's factor, or will you have to do anything differently as you grow?
There's two types of treatment, which is antidiuretic, which makes blood thicker and more sticky, and then replacement therapy, which replaces the protein that you're lacking.
Nice. So the two ways to treat this is the antidiuretic treatment essentially takes some of the liquid out of your blood. A diuretic means that you would remove that liquid, and it means that your blood would be a little bit more sticky, a little bit thicker, so it would clot a little bit easier. And the second one, replacement therapy, means that they physically will put more of the factor that they might have synthesized outside of a human being, so it might be synthetic or laboratory made, and they'd inject that into you to help you clot. But that, of course, wouldn't be a long-term fix. That would just be a case-by-case scenario. If you started to bleed, they would be able to inject you with that factor. Okay. And how does this impact you when you're driving?
When I would start driving, I would need to keep treatment in the car in case of an accident. I was told that I at least need to keep a health card in my car in case of an accident. They would know how to treat me. And my sister, when she started driving, she was given something so that if she were to get in an accident and she was bleeding, it would put it over the wound and temporarily stop the bleeding.
Wow. Do you have any problems with this on a day-to-day basis?
Not daily. I mean, sometimes I'll get nosebleeds. Like at the beginning of this school year, I had a lot. And sometimes I get bruises, but it's not daily.
Interesting. And you said you and your sister go to the hemophilia clinic, right?
Yeah, once a year we visit Hershey Medical Center to get blood taken.
So they can just track your progress.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Very cool. So you mentioned your sister. Is there anybody else in your family that has Van Willebrand's?
My mother, my grandfather could potentially have it. They've never been tested, though.
So it was cool. The last time Kayla came over and she was talking about this disease, we actually sketched out her family pedigree, and we were trying to trace it because it's an autosomal and it's a dominant disorder, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because it's dominant, we thought that we could trace it out. But the difficulty is that it's a spectrum disease. So just because you have it doesn't mean that you necessarily express it as much as other people. So we think that her mother might have had some symptoms of this, and her grandfather might have also had some symptoms. And if that was the case, then that would mean it's dominant, and it followed through her grandfather, and then through her mother, and on to Kayla and her sister. Okay. Have you learned anything about genetics that applies to this disease in this unit?
The autosomal trait is the first 22 chromosomes, and they're not sex chromosomes, which is where it's found. And it's also a dominant trait, which shows over the recessive trait.
Very cool. So it's kind of cool. We've been learning about this genetics unit, and I love the opportunity just to point out that these tools that we learn in genetics are life applicable, and it kind of helps when you see a real life situation in front of you. So thank you so much, Kayla, for being brave and sharing your story, and I hope you guys enjoy.